I'm here.
So Colorado, when is it? August?
August, I think. Let's have one in Turkey.
Yeah, we should. We should, absolutely. We have a lot of IDC events in Turkey actually. Smart Manufacturing, CIO Summit. They do a nice one in Paris also.
Yeah?
Yeah, you should join that. It's a like 70, 80 people, exclusive event, no parallel tracks. Everything runs through together, 2 days.
Through IDC?
Not a bad one. Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
More
If,
information
if
if
I
you-
look familiar, you're not going through some psychic change. I've just got off the previous one, so I'm back again, whether you like it or not. I have a few different people on the panel. And this is a panel discussion. We have IT leaders on this panel. And to my right, Lookman Fazal, who was during the fireside chat just now. We have Sunil Dadlani, who was the Chief Information and Digital Transformation Officer and the CISO for Atlantic Health System. And we have Berke Menekli, who is the Vice President and Global Head of Digital Platform Services for BSH Home Appliances Group. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. We have a lot of areas to cover today, but I want to start with the main thing is here we are just into 23. We're going to talk a little bit about budgets, where you see your budget being focused on for this year. The IDG just completed its 2023 State of the CIO survey, and it gave some interesting things on budgets in terms of what people are investing in. And customer experience seems to be moving up there, so that's very important, obviously. Security wasn't number one, which is unusual, and it wasn't unusual because it's kind of permeates everything, because security is every facet of IT right now. But I want to hear from you about your budgets. So what's most important? I'm going to start to my far right with Berke.
All right. So, I mean, the voice is okay?
I don't think you're on.
Okay. So the overall budget is kind of flat, maybe with a slight increase. But when we look at this standard separation of run and change, I can talk basically about 60-40, so 60% in run, because we are investing a lot on resilience, operational excellence, as you said, security, and for us, they're all part of the run activities. So on the change, when we look at strategic versus tactical projects, I think we see like a 70-75% of strategic investments and some 20-25% quick wins. And out of these strategic investments, the biggest areas for us is consumer journey, connected appliances, which is our strategy, and customer service, which is, again, consumer related.
Yeah, and customer service is important. I think the term that's being bounced around right now is observability, internet reliability. Your customer has to be able to, especially after the pandemic, everyone's spoiled. You know, when you order something from Amazon, I want it yesterday. And I want to be able to return it tomorrow if I don't like it. So people are kind of spoiled in that respect. So the customer is a little different. So you really have to put a lot of effort into dealing with customers. Sunil, what about you?
That's a great question, Tim. And the way we are positioned, actually, my experience has taught me that it really starts with where you're reporting into. If you're reporting into CEO, then your perspective and your budgets are different compared to if you're reporting to COO or CFO. Fortunately for us, I'm reporting into CEO. And in terms of talking to our budgets, you know, we are seeing about 4 to 5% increase in the budget. And 60% is to run the business, 20% is to grow the business, and 20% is to transform the business. So that's where we are divided into. And mostly our focus is on, if I have to say, clinical and non-clinical areas both, because essentially consumerization is the key now for our industry. So we are extensively spending our budget dollars, top dollars in consumer experience and engagement, cybersecurity, and analytics, data and analytics, and also artificial intelligence, again, both in clinical areas as well as non-clinical areas.
Yeah, and I like the fact that some of that budget is transforming the business, because that's often something that's overlooked. You know, you say we have to look at our infrastructure. We have to get rid of technical debt. We have to focus on innovation. But they don't focus on transforming the business, because maybe digital transformation, the term is kind of worn out right now. You know, we've bandied it about for a lot of years. So that's an important part of the budget. And Lookman, I know that you mentioned earlier, and if anyone was here during that thing, I'm sure a lot of them were, about you're into the fourth year of a transformation plan. Tell us a little about how it changed, though. I want to find out how much your budget has changed from, say, last year to this year in terms of driving those efforts forward.
Yeah, so for those who don't know me, my name is Lookman Fazal. I'm the CIO and the digital officer for NJ Transit. We are the third largest transportation company in the US, transporting a million people a day. So it's pretty large operations, and we sit in between Pennsylvania and New York City, and we are right in the middle. So budget, when I joined in 2019, I differ a little from my friend Sunil here. It's not about who you're reporting to. If your CEO is not at all technology savvy, then he or she might think like a CFO. So you need a person who really believes in technology. That's the person you want to report to, right? Who believes in transformation and believes in consumer impact. So year one, when I inherited this work, 50% of our technology was either end of life or about to be end of life, which meant that whatever investments were done, they were not sufficient enough because we were in the state of 50% in red. So I asked my management team to fund me in the beginning with the promise that as time goes back, I'll start returning money. And that's the journey.
You actually told them you'd return the money.
Yes. So yes, I did. Because I took a cost center. I said, why can't I start generating revenue for the company? Why does IT have to always be a cost center? So we started coming up with our own app. That app, which is our mobile app, used by over a million people a day, that app, why can't that app be sold to the rest of the transit agencies in the world? Because we invested a lot of money. Why can't we be the IT service center? So that's one of our products. Another product that we have is, how in IT you have these magic quadrants from Gartner, top right, what are the 3 companies you need to talk to? Well, nothing like that existed for transit. What's the vendor that you need to talk to which will provide the on-time performance of our train? What's the vendor will tell us about the passenger counting? All those technologies that are specific for a transport company, there was no such quadrant. So we created that intellectual property. That's our product number 2. Product number 3 is we started building our own rewards program. So the more you ride, the more rewards you earn. That reward program, which started a year or so ago, has been very successful. And now we have started, people are downloading the app, they are adding rewards. That has built a whole ecosystem around it because now you can redeem those rewards at your local pizza store, at your local Dunkin' Donut. So that vendor network, is now generating, that's product number 3. Product number 4 that we have is the whole, I'm not sure if you'll get a chance, but there's a whole innovation train that we are working on. It's almost ready. That's going to be product number 4. If I'm now able, think of it that now I have 4 SKUs.
So wait, an innovation train, are we talking about a physical train here?
A physical train, yeah.
Walk me through that. Can I buy a ticket on the train?
Yeah, so the end goal is pretty interesting, but so let me just finish so these 4 products, if I start selling them, I'm going to start generating revenue. I start now becoming from a cost center to a profit center. And area 5, which is which a lot of companies don't tap into, or maybe they do, is the grant after the grants which are available, because now you have a shovel-ready concept to show. You start winning those grants. So last year, for the first time, we have won smaller grants, but now we have won about $54 million in grant just last year. That's new money coming into the company. So from a budget, I can return.
And you're not going to give that back, right?
That's the money I brought in.
That's right. So if you notice, the name of the show is the IoT solution. So IoT is very important for every business. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, but we're going to talk about the challenges of making use of the data. as I said earlier when Lookman was on stage with me, it's easy, we've kind of figured out how to collect the data. It's how to make use of the data is the big problem. And the more data you collect, the harder it is to find that needle in a haystack. So how do you effectively manage that process in terms of turning that data into business intelligence? Sunil, I'll start with you.
That's a great question again, and let me give you some stats. The entire world data, if you take into account, 1/3 of the data is healthcare data, believe it or not. It is growing compoundedly almost at the 36% every year. That's a huge data growth.
Yeah.
73 days, the medical knowledge doubles. So we have a big data problem. The healthcare data is growing 6% faster than the manufacturing data, 11% faster than the financial data, and 10% faster than electronic and media data.
And this, I assume this doesn't take into consideration, someone's wearing an Apple Watch and they're collecting their own information and sending it to their doctor as well.
Correct. So edge computing, we have about almost globally 14 billion plus edge computing devices. It'll be trillion in the next 5 to 10 years. It's a huge data. Healthcare data complexity is nobody owns a complete data. There are payers, there are medical device people, there are health systems, everybody is having portion of data. So there is a problem of big data. When I say big data, it is volume, velocity, and variety. It's doubling, tripling every 24 months. That's the velocity and volume. And then variety. You have unstructured data, you have structured data. So it's almost becomes a technological challenge to make sense out of the entire data. So what do you do with that? Every industry has recognized that in data, irrespective of industry, is the new oil. It's a new currency. Everybody's trying to make sense out of data. So for us, it's very important that we put certain technologies in place. But again, I can talk about technologies, but the most important lesson I've learned is, you have people, you have process, you have technology. You can build the best technologies. If you don't have the right processes, the initiatives will fail. You build the best technologies, you build the best processes. If you do not have the right workforce that really knows how to use the data and they are trained to those capabilities, even then it fails. So the key criteria is focus on the people first.
Yeah.
Right? As new generation comes in, more and more baby boomers are retiring. They don't want to work in mainframes. They want to start with artificial intelligence.
They're going to say, what's a mainframe?
Right? So it's a challenge starting with the people. Then bigger challenge is the legacy mindset and the legacy behavior that exists as part of the culture within the organization. Nobody wants to change. Everybody wants to feel comfort level when they are operating in their comfort zone. So it's a cultural change that you have to bring into the organization to make sense out of data.
Yeah, but the opportunity there, because I'm kind of an optimist, I'm a half full kind of guy, is that when you have these other people coming, all these people who may not be directly involved or working for IT, but they may be in the business side or maybe outside, they're bringing in new ideas.
Correct.
And a new perspective. We're stuck in the weeds, so we look at things as I got to solve this individual problem and get to the other side. But they can say, no, wait a minute, I can see a little root right there. And solve that. So people, I agree with you, are they the best resource? And finally, business is looking at people as a resource, which is a good thing. It's not just looking at software and hardware, but your people involved as well. Berke, you have put a lot of effort into building up your data scientist teams. We were in a talk earlier this afternoon when you said they work like Sherlock Holmes and routing out these problems and solving difficulties. So why don't you give a little bit of background on that?
I'm not going to repeat the same examples, but basically, what we see also similar to my colleagues here is definitely the demand and the size of the things is growing way beyond that the IT departments can handle. So we need actually to support each other. We need to bring what now the new buzzword is the fusion teams. And one of the maybe earlier steps on this is the citizen approach.
Yep.
I was just listening to you when we stepped in, you were wrapping it up, and you talked about a bit the citizen computing. This is what we strongly believe in the last few years, actually. Because when we built these data science teams in IT, we couldn't afford to get more than 10, 15 people. But then there are hundreds of thousands of engineers in our engineering company who understands their processes, who understands their data, who understands their business cases, and they just need to be trained on how to use and how to approach this data, how to maybe use some methods, and then also in a way they need to be these red line thing, they need to be somehow ring fenced, that what they do is doesn't harm or collide or conflict with the enterprise reports or enterprise data sets or results that we produce. But looking at that, we created this data science club a few years ago, and more than 300 engineers joined in the first set. Now we have thousands to be trained in certain tool set to understand how the data stewardship needs to be approached and how the governance of the data needs to be executed. And then we gave them freedom to do whatever they want to do inside their departments with their own data, because they can create more meaning, they can create use cases, innovation opportunities with this data. And we said the only thing is, if you are cross boundaries by mixing the data with other data sources or creating a interdepartmental or enterprise level reporting, then this is the place where we step in, because we know the governance on this, we know the proper data definition sets. But inside your department, you have complete freedom, and now we enable you to play with that. This worked not only in the data science area, but multiple other technologies like the low-code, no-code development, right, the RPA development center. So we have a lot of areas where we enabled our users in the business departments so that they can actually cut their own code, they can solve their own problems. And I was given the example of the t-shirt sizes, of the things that to be developed, so that they can handle all the small to medium stuff, so that the real IT people can then focus on the real complex stuff. But when it comes to create meaning from these immense data sets that we are producing from, maybe not as much as healthcare, but we alone has a 1.3 petabytes of connected appliance data set, then it is where their experience makes more sense, because they can create meaning with the data. They can then understand maybe some relations, like, preventive maintenance algorithms, some maybe other types of use cases. And it is there we also enable them to do those discoveries through hackathons or through other methods.
Yeah, and Lookman, obviously you're collecting a lot of data as well. We have a lot of data collectors here. So tell me about some of the ways that you're using that data to transfer into business intelligence.
So in my previous talk, I gave an example on the work of what we're doing in terms of data. So in our 4-year journey, year one we were at a very infancy level from a data perspective, data maturity perspective. We were at level 1 from a CMM level 5, and we started putting in processes in place to move to a more mature level. So in year one, all we could produce was a on-time performance data. What % of our buses and trains were on time and not on time. Then we moved, as we started building the warehouses, we started then looking at what are the 7 reasons why a train is not on time. And then as more data we started collecting, we found out the exact reason out of those 7 reasons why a train could not be on time. So example, it could be a mechanical failure, but what type of mechanical failure? Is it a spark plug, or is it a track? Is it a wheel? What kind of mechanical failure?
And that's the technical stuff, but you're also dealing with the human element too, especially in the trains. Everybody is different. Yes. Everybody has good days and bad days. So how do you apply data analytics to that? And Berke, you can add, after Lookman talks a bit, you're dealing with a lot of customers like that there. You and I sat down earlier and I told you about my woes with my washing machine and my dryer. I don't want to say I hated the company, not one of yours hopefully, but there are a lot of little personalities involved in that. So how do you deal with the personalities?
So personalities of the consumers who are consuming the data?
People riding the train. Maybe not the innovation train, but they're riding the train in general.
Yeah, so everybody is a consumer at some point, right? Eventually, 1 million people, 1 million lives. How do we look at their lives, and how do we look at from a journey, the experience perspective of the consumer? how do we make their lives better, that experience better, and where data can help them in terms of making that decision. So I could be giving you notifications to wake up if you're sleeping in the train. That's the data I've made. Using data, I've made their life simple because now they don't miss their stop. I could give you data which would tell you when exactly to reach a bus stop and save time. So there are a lot of these consumer data that we are pushing out. So if you've used our app has we use this agile methodology there. Every 2 weeks you'll see a new feature that's pushed out to the consumer app, so that their lives become easier, and that's all behind that. It's all data.
Yeah, and Berke, you talked about putting a lot of technology into the appliances, and a lot of not demands but suggestions from people that some work, some don't work. How is this? How do you manage all this information into creating an actual product without creating something that may fail in the market?
I mean, I think failure is a natural part of the process. So you should accept that some things will fail anyway. It's just that, when you fail, I think I was talking about the base layer architecture concept that, some of the things which we want to build as permanent, and we bring into our system of differentiation layer, and we custom build it as a good development. But then there are a lot of things we want to test it out on the innovation layer to see if they're going to pan out or not. And this is the work we do at universities, we do with a lot of startups, to just understand if there is a business case. I told also about the segmentation of the consumers. Maybe that's what you were coming into.
Yeah.
That some are more closer to the digital nativity, some a little bit more traditional maybe, and a little bit far away. And among those different segments of the consumers, we are, of course, the one who is more digitally trained or digitally savvy. And then, maybe sometimes you don't realize what your majority of the people wants. So these innovation things, we test it out. We see in maybe a small example here, a POC there. And then we see, how it's going to pan out. Do we need to roll this out in every place? Or do we just keep it in certain countries, certain maybe product sizes? We try to decide, but it's always a test and learn thing.
Yes.
And some of the things, the best thing is to be able to build the innovation quickly, just to understand, is it going to work out? So you need it permanently, rebuild it again as a solid structure, or you just throw it away because it doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't work today.
Yeah.
I was just giving this example. Sometimes you just build things for fun, or for, not say for fun, but for gimmick, like when an executive was visiting you, you want to show something, and for that we build a drone-based warehouse counting. But then it turned out to be, hey, that's a very good idea actually. If we can make it sustainable, then we can save a lot of man hours, health and safety concerns, this and that, and now it's a permanent part of our structure.
Yeah.
So but I think it all starts with testing and being able to test quickly and fail or decide quickly.
And I don't like it when you say that you're going to build something and throw it away. That's probably the worst business model of anything. I don't think anybody's going to be successful doing that. So I assume you're using technology to simulate things, maybe digital twinning for product development, which seems to be a hot topic right now. Sunil, what about you in terms of that area, in terms of digital twins, simulation, and things like that?
That's again, we are using digital twins extensively. I'll give you an example. For example, a heart flow analyzer. It's if a patient is having a
you can't throw a heart away.
Arrhythmia or some heart event. The two options. One is you can use an invasive process for doing an angiogram, and put the needle and put the dye, and it'll tell you where the flow is correct or not. Or use the digital twin. That exactly after the CT scan is done, it creates a 3D model of the heart, and it tells you exactly where the blockage is, which veins or which arteries are flowing well, and which is the blue one, which is the red one, where you need the more diagnostic and intervention. In a nutshell, the more technology you add, the more data it is collecting. But the important part is, do all the IoTs and edge devices that are connecting, do you need all this information back to your cloud information or your on-prem data center? The answer is no. You need to be very selective. Yes, you need to be very close in terms of computing, in terms of storing where the data is being generated. That's more of wearables, sensors, devices where the patient is wearing. But at the same time, you need to be very cognizant what selective data you need to pick up that needs to get transmitted back to the centralized either cloud solution or on-premise solutions, because otherwise it becomes garbage in and garbage out. You are drowning in the data.
But isn't more information better? I mean, I get the fact that if you put garbage in, it's a bad thing, but isn't more information better when you're trying to get a complete picture or trying to do something?
That's a great question, and I would qualify that with, it's not about the more information, it's the quality of the information that matters.
Okay, so what are you doing to refine that information before you start analyzing it? Because that's a lot of companies and people don't think about that. They collect the data, and then they worry about, how am I going to sift through it, instead of before they collect the data, decide what are they looking for in the first place.
So that's again a brilliant question, and I would say that it really starts with your domain. Let's say that non-clinical, let's pick up a consumer experience that you want to capture, whether through surveys or through mobile app. Does a patient is having a problem in scheduling an appointment? Is the wait a long time? When you're in the hospital or in the ambulatory settings, are you not getting the right experience, or are they not valuing your beliefs or other systems? So there is a way to collect data, and then most importantly, you have technologies now capable, enabled with AI, that you can do the sentiment analysis. Hey, why is this particular location or this providers, the consumers are very happy, they get the appointments, there is no adverse events, and they are not getting the readmissions.
Right.
Whereas one particular location, even though offering same services, you are having this experience. So clearly it shows that it requires more training, more coaching and understanding. Is there a difference in the consumer? Maybe, for example, one particular community, let's say, I'm just making it up, more of a Spanish background. Are we not providing any translation capabilities or other capabilities that we can cater those segment of consumers, healthcare consumers, more clearly with their defined values? So it really depends on what you want to do. It starts with the definition. Don't start with the technology and then try to solve what problem it can solve.
Or
Start with the problem.
It's the parameters too. You need guardrails.
Correct.
You can't have like an endless, a 16-lane highway and expect to have everything flow through there. You got to pull it a little bit and focus it.
And just to add to that, we went from an era of data, when the world of Yahoo,
Yep.
the era of information, when Google came about, and now we are in the era of knowledge, like ChatGPT. That's where it falls in.
Yeah.
It's taking all that information and converting it into knowledge.
Yeah, I agree. And since you have gone back in time in the Wayback Machine, if you look back in the past, which is only about 3 years, the big terminology was innovation drives digital transformation. And I still think that's true to some extent, to a great extent. But what I think today is a lot of the innovation is technology driven, and it's not being thought driven. New devices come out. If you look at the Consumer Electronics Show, especially for the medical profession, there were so many self-monitoring things that you can put in your house and near your body, that massive amounts of data, you don't know what you're going to do with it. It'll probably aggravate your doctor. So the question is are we in an era right now that technology is in the driver's seat, and is that going to be a problem to have an innovative culture within your organization?
So I mean, the R&D person in me is always there. So I used to work for Bell Labs. We did a lot of experiments. Some made it, to the rest of the world. Others were just shelved. So that's how I think. I did start a innovation center at work. In a transit company, in transportation company, you never think of the metro here having an innovation center, but I did start one.
It's better than the U.S. Postal Service, but
absolutely, yeah. So I said, and it was an experiment. I didn't know, if I hire these innovators and they'll come up with, but it started with one person, and then now it's a 10-person team. Just focus on what's out there, benchmarking ourselves with the rest of the world, moving that needle, and moving it into a more innovative, cultural-driven organization. And this team has done a tremendous job. I've just hired a chief innovation officer in the department. Just focus on that. The goal of this person is going to be looking at, what's happening in the innovation world, where are we, what are our competition doing, What are other transit agencies doing? I know in the U.S. we are way behind in terms of compared to Europe. So how do we get there?
Now, behind in respect of how the best use.
Even the technology, right? The latest buses, we don't have the latest buses. Or,
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about transportation.
Transportation.
Okay.
Yeah, and the technology inside it.
Although we buy the latest buses, we just don't know how to repair them when we get them. We forget to request spare parts when they break down. At least in Boston, anyway. I'm not saying.
Yeah, I mean, transportation here. I took one yesterday, and I saw the technologies around, and I'm like, maybe. And I started taking pictures. I said, this is what I'm going to put back.
So you're collecting all sorts of thoughts.
Yeah, in fact, we are working with the Spanish headquartered company, Navilance. I don't know if many of you have heard about that company. It's about a QR code. You'll see QR codes at your metros here. You can scan them. It solves a big consumer problem for us. So, and there are several such companies we are working on. So this group has been very successful. This group now has generated its own revenue by applying for different grants. So, the 54 million example I gave you is this group that brought in that new money.
Good. Okay. Don't give it back.
Not
what and Berke, do you see more of this innovation coming from your citizen developer aspect? These people who aren't necessarily in the weeds of IT and may have a sharper image on the problem as a whole, rather than the weeds and the forest and the trees aspect.
I mean, I think depending on the area, it's coming from everywhere. We have dedicated teams who is looking into certain areas for innovation. Like one example is we identified that in UK, the dishwasher ownership is very low, and that's not talking the income level of the country. So we wanted to understand that, and we sent a team down there to make a research. And then in the end, we understood that a lot of people who is living in the houses, not in the apartments, have their sink, which they wash the dishes, with a window, who is looking the garden. So then those people are treating the dishwashing as a treatment, like a yoga, ceremony, and that's why they don't want to buy a dishwasher. So then we thought, okay, I mean, what we could do, like an appliance, to sell them. And the team over there is developed an idea that should we have like a small electric operated, washer, cleaner with some scrubs, so that we make it easier, but they still have the physical experience, the therapy, looking at the garden thing. So they built a prototype based on cardboards and tapes and everything, just to see the experience. So this is just an example that how we are looking into different parts of the world for different types of innovation. And yeah, I mean, it's coming all around because we are all thinking about how we can provide a better life to our consumers. And this drives the innovation. And we are the consumers inside. So, we talked about the digitalization areas, the manufacturing processes, the product digitalization, the enterprise processes, the consumer journey. So all these areas, there are lots of ideas that is coming in, and the ones that we test and implement, they flourish.
So that leads to my next question: is prioritizing IT products and projects. Obviously, the business is playing a greater role now in terms of what IT might be doing in terms of focus on things that drive revenue, focus on things that are going to increase awareness in the public. How much pressure is that on you to do what you want to do in terms of innovation and still keep your team motivated in order to do that? And this goes back to even before COVID, when IT was slowly transitioning to think more about customers, transitioning away from being project-minded to product-minded, and then all of a sudden COVID hit and they're saying, you got to understand everything. So Sunil, what kind of pressures are you dealing with in terms of the people and the culture right now?
That's a great question, and I'm just trying to formulate my thought process. First and foremost, it starts with the DNA of the company. How are you viewed as a technology within the organization? Are you, at least for us, we are viewed as technologies at the front and the center. So we have a seat on the table where you are part of the revenue generation, you are responsible for business strategy. It is not an afterthought that somebody without the IT made the business strategy and said that, hey, do these 3 projects. That's not the way Atlantic Health operates. So you have in the seat on the table where you're meeting with HR, finance leaders, clinical leaders, and R&D leaders, where you understand what the strategy and the roadmap is for next 3 to 5 years. Given that 3 to 5 years is a long time now, every year it will change, every quarter it will change. So once you zero in on your DNA, what you want to do, then it comes to how you are viewed. Again, coming back, you don't want to be viewed as a cost center and just keeping the operations on. Especially for me, I don't join the organization where the CIO role is to keep the lights on. I tell them politely that I'm the wrong guy for that. That's not a CIO role. CIO role has evolved.
Yeah,
you are responsible for this. But again, it comes back to, at the end of the day, what kind of team you have built. You need what we call skill set refresh, vendor refresh, and technology refresh. The old mindset, old technologies, old processes are not going to work in the new digital economy, period. It is changing so fast that you need to continuously invest in your team and the people you build in. And at the same time, you need to understand that you cannot do everything on your own in-house. That's the key. You need to rely on reliable ecosystem partners that will help you through that journey, whether you're trying to grow organically within the markets that you operate, but grow in the new markets, grow with the new product and services. What can you do while protecting your own core services?
Well, you must have a weak link. What is your biggest challenge in making all this thing happen very smoothly? I mean, it's a great formula on paper. What's the weakest link there? What requires a little bit of work this year?
I think I can talk about culture, I can talk about people, but I think most importantly, healthcare is an extensively regulated organization. You just cannot bring anything which is not approved by FDA or other governments and start using it in a clinical settings, because it's a life and death.
Yeah.
It's a different matter if the technology works and you lose few hundred thousands or few millions. That's a different. But we are talking about human life, where every minute counts if the care is not delivered correctly, whether it's diagnostic, whether it's care, whether it's intervention. So I think being a heavily regulated industry, and secondly, the lag of regulations at the federal and state level to cope up with the technology pace, that's again a big showstopper.
Yeah. Regulations are tough, and as you're right, it's the medical industry in particular,
Correct.
medical field. Let's switch gears a bit and talk about security. The best thing, I guess, we're in an era right now where it's mitigating risk. It's not a question of if I'm going to get hit by a cyber attack, it's when and what can I do to pivot really quickly and mitigate that risk, mitigate the impact. So AI and ML, these tools are being used to perhaps detect an incident a little faster, make sure you have the right recovery technology in place that come into play for business continuity. How do you see the situation with security changing over the next couple of years as these things are used more and more and those technologies advance? Lookman.
So, in the transportation industry, we are a high threat target. Security is very important to us. And it's a million people who ride our train on a daily basis. So that's million lives. So it's very important that we keep that in mind. And we are first responders for our state. So if there's any incident, our technology must work. It should be the last down and first up. So outages will happen. Threats, there will be events. So there's no way to keep yourself 100% secure. The most secure laptop is the one which is powered off, right? But that's not the way to operate. So we just want to build resiliency that we are the last one to go down and the first one to come back up.
And you have to educate your people, because the weakest link in security are the users.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to scribble down my password on a Post-it note and put it inside my drawer where no one ever looks. And that's where that weakness, but you have to educate them, and then you have to keep on reinforcing it, which is kind of annoying to some extent, but necessary with people.
Yeah, and those phishing attacks about, send me your check at this account, and so I am your so-and-so vendor, that will always continue, no matter how much you educate the people that don't click on the button to wire transfer, that check. And we have had those incidents. I'm sure many companies have had those incidences.
Yeah. And Berke, you're putting more and more technology into these appliances, and I think one of the research companies did a a study years back and said that when a cyber attack happens, it's going to come through some innocuous little point, a little entryway, a little doorway, maybe on somebody's smartphone or your smartwatch or whatever. But now we have these smart appliances that have internet capabilities, and they have IoT capabilities, and they're transmitting information and data back and forth. What are you doing at that, in that respect to minimize the impact of something getting into these appliances?
I mean, basically, yeah, I remember a cartoon which I saw, you know, a ransomware attacked your kitchen, and then the fridge was not going to talk to your oven unless you pay some ransom, right?
It's not going to open up. It's not going to tell you when the milk goes sour.
Yeah, you want pizza? Hey, pay me something. So, I mean, what we do, we have a proprietary technology in these devices on the connectivity, and we keep them also in an isolated IoT cloud. And we are, I mean, there is no 100% security, we know that. But at least we are trying to limit the damage that could happen with those devices. And because of that, we do some health and safety precautions. So for example, I mean, we can make a washing machine start automatically, but we don't allow it unless you are really near the machine. So we have like additional measures to be built in. So that if you are not physically around the machine, your telephone senses it. We are not allowing you to remotely start the washing machine so that you can ensure the door is closed and everything, or at least you can hear something wrong is going over there. So we are taking some additional precautions like that, and we are also building inside the security measures we can take. But yeah, it's a constant uphill battle.
Yeah, we're all learning as we go along. And Sunil, you're in a highly regulated industry. You're in an industry where the consumers are being asked to be more involved in their healthcare and in terms of predictive stuff, and wearing their watches to make sure they does EKGs while you're riding your bike or while you're jogging. So there's a potential for a lot of either the wrong information or a security breach to come from anywhere. So what are your concerns there? What are you doing?
See, first and foremost, I want to make a very bold statement. It's not the question of if, it's the question of when the organization is going to get attacked and have a ransomware or any cyber event. And there are only two types of organizations in the world right now. One, which are hacked and they know about it. Second, which are hacked and they don't know about it. So rest assured, all of our information about everybody is available on the dark web in one shape or form. That's the ground reality. In terms of putting the cyber, again, you said all the healthcare systems being regulated again in healthcare systems, it's HIPAA compliance and other compliance. What is most important is the industry is changing, the new ecosystem is changing, it requires more interoperability. Interoperability means you are required to share systems.
Right.
So you put some techniques in place to the best of your knowledge which are available in the industry. For example, anonymizing the data, de-identifying the data where you don't need to share identified information. Secondly, putting controls in place, for example, so that even if that de-identified or anonymized data is hacked, they are not able to re-engineer and get back. Most importantly, then there are regulations in healthcare. If any time you, as an organization, you know that your consumers or patients have been hacked, by federal mandate, you are supposed to inform law enforcement agencies within 24 to 48 hours. And then you're also supposed to notify the patients if you know that their information has been compromised. So it's an uphill task. And I want to repeat what you said. The hackers have to be right only one time. The organization has to be right a billion times.
Yeah.
So the odds are always, unfortunately, in their favor. So that's the world we live in.
So we're going to have some of Berke's T-shirts made with that little things, so everybody knows some of the pressures that everyone on the panel goes through every day. We're just about out of time. We actually are out of time. And I wanted to cover such things as getting more information on that Data Science Club and the Innovation Train. But you'll have to approach these gentlemen after and ask questions, which I hope you do. I'd like to thank Lookman Fazal, Chief Information and Digital Officer, New Jersey Transit, Berke Menekli, Vice President and Global Head of Digital Platform Services for BSH Home Appliances, and finally Sunil Dadlani, who is the Chief Information and Digital Transformation Officer and CISO at Atlantic Health System. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you in the audience. I hope it was informative and fun.
Thank you.